Well, Decipher, I got this new room ready. Though I have to ask the question, why did you ask specifically for a very barren room?
Oh, is this real hardwood flooring?
Yeah, you didn't really give me a lot of specs for a room that is effectively barren.
Oh, I like the little details on the walls.
Yeah, as I said, you pretty much told me make a blank canvas room, which I decided to experiment a little.
What's going on? This room did not exist 5 minutes ago? Is there some kind of chaos god who can bend reality to their will? I can steal their powers and take over the world!
Yes, there is, and good luck with trying to steal my powers. Any rate.
Well, gent, I must admit, this is a rather blank room you've created. Thanks. Decipher asked for it.
Yeah, it was my idea.
Oh? And what sort of scheme do you have twisted in that little dice head of yours?
I'm off to do things. You get back here right now and tell me what you're planning.
And with that out of the way, this is My Adventures with Superman, Episode 4. The episode begins in Metropolis, where Clark Kent is currently consoling Lois Lane about her failed interview with Superman because she feels he's lying about, well, everything.
They even start consulting the tabloids in order to find any and all information about this alien hero, and nothing is going to distract her. Except their boss.
I think this meeting is about how Lois stole the badges of the journalists and they're going to get in trouble. But that's far from the truth. I don't even think he knows himself. No, this meeting is about him giving them an actual job that isn't intern work but journalism work, as he's sending them to the CEO of a tech company called Amazo, who coincidentally himself is named Amazo, and all of his work. But Clark seems to be familiar with him, more rather the negative publicity of him. But they're not there to report on the negative publicity without evidence. No, they're just doing the report on whatever his showcase is, which means it's party time. Now, as happy as I am that we're getting Amazo, a really powerful supervillain already in the series, it's kind of covered up by the fact that I'm still questioning why they still have physical copy newspapers in a world where they have easy immediate access to holographic technology.
Well, I suppose this is where headcanons have to go into play. A good and decent explanation is that Metropolis is just simply ahead of its time as opposed to everywhere else. While this technology may be right and available for larger cities, it may not be as widely available for other countries or countryside folk, similar to the Kents, so they must rely on the newspaper still. Though it's not on the jobs of the viewer to fill in these gaps, it's on the jobs of the writers. So, this is your job, I'm doing it, so you should pay me money.
Well, cut to later in the day. The Super 3 are getting ready for the party. And as we see, Jimmy Olsen has over-prepared and overstocked, but he drops a book which opens a page revealing Clark Kent's hometown, where there's spotted a flying boy. He immediately grabs it, rips it out of the page, and sticks it in his pocket, before anyone notices. Speaking of getting noticed, ooh la la, Lois Lane dressed up.
Not a traditional outfit, but she's not a traditional Lois Lane, so I suppose it fits. So after Lois picks up her arm candy...
Isn't that the other way around?
Not in their relationship. They end up going to the party together, all three of them. They immediately stick out like fish out of water, but it doesn't matter, because Lois has a plan. While they were given keycards of questions to ask for their paper, Lois decides that she wants to be an actual investigative journalist and ask the hard questions, which nobody in their right minds would answer. But that's what she wants to do, and she ropes her boy toy Clark Kent in helping her out, leaving behind the third-wheel Jimmy Olsen.
And here it is, the inevitable superhero team breakdown. This happens in every Marvel or DC property. The inevitable clash of ideals and relationships, which forces all the heroes to go their separate ways, making them easy pickings for villains like me.
Well, he might be twisted and psychotic, but he's not wrong. So Lois and Clark proceed without Jimmy in order to try to interview all of these bigwigs about their corrupt, undercover business practices and all the big things that nobody wants to talk about. So naturally, no one wants to talk about it.
Surprise, surprise! No one wants to talk to the journalists about terrible things they might have done to make their image look bad, or worse yet, criminal activity. The only one who's getting anywhere in this is Jimmy Olsen, and it's not even because he's being a journalist. He's just talking to them normally, and actually being the most effective of getting them to break down barriers. And he's not even trying. Honestly, they should have just been following his lead. So after a full night and no results to speak of, we finally get to the main event, and we see the man of the hour, Ivan Amazo, the CEO of Amazing Industries.
I think it's Amazo Industries. Get it right. We want to be respectful to this supervillain coming up.
Oh yes, I am very intrigued by their adaptation.
So we get introduced to Ivan Amazo and his subordinate, Alex. Just Alex. How would I describe Ivan Amazo?
Think Tony Stark without the natural charisma and a parody of himself. So Ironheart.
Yeah, they appear to be speedrunning his villain origin story, as apparently he's all flashy on the surface, but when some bald guy comes up to him and says that there's a board meeting going on, and that he's in the red, and that even with this super bit of technology that he's introducing tonight, it's not going to save his company, we know it's all for show. He's peacocking. He's a man who's desperate for a win, and he's inevitably going to lose. And it also clears that there's a bit of a demon beneath the surface.
You know, I don't really see a guy like him programming any artificial intelligences that could adapt to any superpower, so I don't really see the robot. You don't suppose he made a Amazo Iron Man suit? Ooh, an Amazo Iron Man sounds awesome!
If I recall correctly, Amazo is an android with godlike abilities.
Well, technically his superpower is being able to look at any other creature with superpowers and obtain those superpowers for himself, permanently. In fact, one could even say that Amazo is a Justice League level supervillain. In Justice League the Animated Series and Justice League Unlimited, he was depicted as some sort of godlike robot after a while, and he had a very interesting character arc involving trying to find his purpose with all this divine power. He was practically a god in the form of a machine, more powerful than any superhero could ever hope to ever become.
So in other words, the perfect program to run my new Ectozords!
Well, I mean, if that's what you want to get out of everything I just said, then by all means.
Well, then Amazo is confronted by Superman. Or rather, Clark Kent in Superman mode. He's already made it apparent he does not like Amazo or his practices, but he's still clearly willing to be fair about things. But once Amazo hears that he's with the press, he immediately tries to bribe him, trying to offer up one of the single high-class women in his orchestra to him. Now, this alone would probably work on most, but not our boy Clark Kent. He's too much of a schoolboy to fall for such tactics. But when he hears our man trashing Lois Lane, all bets are off. Clark immediately goes on the attack, with his accusations of all of his misdeeds, foul play, criminal activity, and just general bad business practice. And he even has his recorder out, confronting him in front of all the guests. But this ends the way it would normally end for anybody else. Clark gets thrown out. Pretending that he's hurt, he gets up and, well, the only one there to support him is Lois. You'd think that Jimmy would be there, but I guess Jimmy's still holding a grudge. And one thing leads to another, and then we get this.
fix. Take it off.
No, please! Don't splice that into the video! People might take that seriously! No! Don't listen to him! Splice it into the video! It'll be so funny!
No, they're not doing anything 18 up. She's just repairing his shirt. But it's here we get a nice little scene between him and Lois.
Lois appears to be having some underlying daddy issues, although what written female character doesn't? And she seems to have some insecurities by the fact that even after a year of trying things on her own, she's still nothing more than an intern, which is why she's been hunting the Superman stories so diligently. This is where Superman does everything in his power to try to cheer her up, which he unintentionally rizzes her even more than what he did before. And it's here that he nearly reveals his secret identity to her. Only for her to ruin the moment when she exclaims that she's going to take Superman's identity, expose it all over the world, and become the greatest story, ruining his life. Which he decides to keep the glasses safely on. Also, they also find a convenient door that leads them to where the supervillains are.
You know, I've always found it kind of stupid, some superheroes hiding their identity from the loved ones. Sure, the general public I can see, but why their loved ones is beyond me. But in this particular case, when the inevitable blow-up happens, when she finds out who he is, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm gonna be on Superman's side. She has given him no reason to ever show his identity to her.
Well, really, Ooze does have a point. Lois is really setting herself up for failure at this point. We are, at this point, 100% on Superman's side because of outbursts that keep happening because of actions that Lois herself has taken. She will have no one to blame but herself when she inevitably figures it out. But I have a feeling that it's not going to take that direction. So Lois and Clark investigate. They sneak inside of the room to discover a whole horde of that weird tech that the other supervillains have used up to this point. And it's been strangely modified in ways that they can't even physically comprehend. But before they can do anything about it, they're forced to hide as Amazo and his partner Alex comes forward. Looks like it's demonstration day, even though Alex warns them that this suit, so it is an Iron Man Amazo suit, the suit is not ready and it will have a severe personality defect on him. But Amazo doesn't care. He was insulted at his own party, he's in a pissed off mood because of the banker, and he wants to showboat, to put himself on top. So he dons the suit and activates the Showtime project. He steps up, he steps forward, and he reveals his amazing technology, and he reveals himself as the Parasite. I'm sorry, what? But that doesn't, how could you just, that doesn't make any sense. That legitimately does not make any sense. You are setting up Amazo. His name is Amazo. The company's name is Amazo. This was being set up from previous episodes as Amazo. Amazo is an established character. Amazo is an established plot. Amazo is his own thing. Why did you turn it all into the Parasite? Now I know that the Parasite and Amazo are about 2 degrees off from each other when in terms of powers. Both of them have the ability of stealing powers from their opponent. The only difference is, Parasite actively steals the power, while Amazo just copy and pastes. They are 2 very distinct, very different characters. You can't just slap Parasite's name on a knockoff Iron Man suit and say, oh, it has the Parasite's powers. No. That is completely disrespectful to Amazo. It also disrespects the Parasites that we've seen prior.
Parasite is a genetic altered supervillain who has the ability to absorb people's abilities with a simple touch, but it was all genetically based. His DNA was altered. He was turned into a monster. And what, is this knockoff Iron Man suit just going to be monster-like? That is such a cop-out. On top of that, Amazo wouldn't have been that hard to be putting into this universe. Most of the supervillains up until this point have all been tech-based, even if their origins were changed so that their powers come from technology. But Parasite, it just... this irks me! So the Parasite... don't say Parasite. It drops from an S-class supervillain to an A, which is still good, but still, we could have had an S. Anyway, as the Parasite's motives been known, it apparently he feels as though that because with all of the Superman nonsense that have been going on, he wants to even the playing field for humanity, so he developed the Parasite technology. Which, he immediately goes full supervillain cuckoo and starts throwing civilians out the window. Superman sees this and goes off to get dressed. But this time Lois and Jimmy actively see he's disappeared. So Superman gets dressed and saves the civilians. And this is where the fight really begins. Superman versus the not Amazo. Also, Alex is here. Say hello, Alex! And so begins the gladiator match between Parasite and Superman. Superman tests him out, dealing a few punches, but he not only absorbs the punches, but he seems to be only growing more powerful through them. It looks like this Parasite suit has a weird kinetic energy absorption and mutation effect. A suit that has the ability to absorb the energy and mutate to adapt to that energy. I have to admit, that's new. Not even his laser vision will work against that thing. And to make matters worse, the area that has been set up also seems to drain Superman's abilities, and it goes directly into the suit. So, Superman has really no way of winning in this scenario.
Okay, gent, I'm not very good at this whole cheering people up thing, but if you look at the visuals, they at least look like they have a competent fight scene.
Yeah, the fight scene looks pretty cool. In fact, I'd even go as far as to say that this is probably the best fight that we got in the series so far. Even when Superman was going against up all those robots, this one is still a much better spectacle. And it's about 2 degrees off from how I would imagine things would go if they was fighting Amazo regardless. So I guess there's really not too much difference.
Good, and I bet that armor would look great on me.
I suppose it... Wait, no! So the fighting continues, and this is actually a pretty decent slugfest between the Parasite versus Superman. But during the fight, it seems that the Parasite was starting to lose control over himself, and he starts attacking the civilians. Superman does his best to try to deal with him, but this guy can take every punch he can dish, as well as get stronger every time he dishes it out. And the walls also act as a bit of a power source for the Parasite as well. In short, this Superman is losing very much so. So Lois and Jimmy decide to get their anchors out of their pants and start doing something. They go up to where Alex is, and Lois knocks him the fuck out. And with Jimmy Olsen's weird library of gadgets, they manage to solve the problem and turn off the shield, which allows for a little bit more of an even playing field. But the result is still, if Superman attacks, then the Parasite grows in strength. So what does Superman do? He just simply stops attacking. Just starts kind of weaving and waving around. And with no kinetic energy and no power source powering the suit, the Parasite begins to demutate back down into its original form. And without a steady source of power to power the suit draws power from the only thing it has any access to. Amazo.
So, in a montage of body horror, Amazo himself starts getting fed to his own parasite suit. Superman, being Superman, does everything he can to save his life. And while he does save it, I don't think he really is in a position to want to be saved with that.
Looks like Lord Zed after a 12-hour session with Rita, you know what I'm saying? I don't need that mental image in my head!
What's this? New torture material? I have to put a pen in that.
So the episode winds down like the other episodes. Superman delivers the villains to the paramedics, where Parasite swears that Superman cheated and he'll get his run back. Good luck with that.
They tried to go where all of that weird technology is in order to get the proof, but it's all disappeared. All of it.
So Lois and Clark just kind of sit on the curb thinking to themselves that this whole thing may have been a waste of time. And that maybe they weren't really cut out to be reporters. But they kind of lean into each other, and Clark even gives Lois his coat in order to keep her warm, and they give each other the encouragement they need to keep moving forward. And they end up walking home together, leaving Jimmy Olsen in the dust. Yeah, they're really going to set up this giant falling out pretty big. But then we cut to Lois by herself. She's currently investigating Superman still, tearing down her murder wall, as she calls it, and puts up a new set of pictures, flyers, and strings, trying to see if she can find a way to connect all of the weird sightings and try to figure out who Superman is. She always feels like she's just one step behind, but is closing in.
And all things would be fine if she wasn't still wearing Clark's shirt. She puts her hands in his pocket, and she finds the crumpled up piece of paper. Remember that crumpled up piece of paper from earlier? Clark never threw it out or laser visioned it. So she's able to find it, piece it on her wall, restring it, and then she has a montage. A flashback montage. Superman and Clark were never in the same place. Clark always seemed to have these unusual abilities that she couldn't explain at the time. But she wasn't thinking as a reporter then, she was thinking as, I'm in love with this hunk of man meat. Putting her horniness aside, she's able to see through the facade. She finally realized Superman is Clark Kent.
Ew. Not only do we have third wheel Jimmy Olsen and his inevitable crash out about constantly being left behind by the two lovebirds, we also got Lois finding out who Superman really is, before he had a chance to tell her. Oh, this friendship blow-up is going to be huge!
And while I will feast upon that chaos in a moment, right now we have to figure out what happened in this episode.
This one felt less like the relationship drama that they've been building up with, and more like a traditional superhero story, which is more than welcome. The build-up of the unknown villain, the obvious plot details, the fact that Clark already had a grudge against the guy and now he's a supervillain for him to punch battle, and of course, the reveal of the mech suit that is the Parasite. A supervillain who is at least B tier in the Superman Rogues Gallery. Possibly A tier.
And while I am still upset that they slid the Parasite in at the very last second when they built up Amazo so well, I can't deny that the fight between Parasite and Superman wasn't at least digestible. And albeit, I do think it's a pretty creative idea to have a suit that mutates the more energy it absorbs. So there's no telling just how powerful the suit would become. While I would have preferred a more organic Parasite, the suit one isn't bad, and at least it has an original take on a supersuit.
And don't think we won't remember that hidden detail with Alex. We'll be doing our research to figure out who this Alex actually is.
Though I do have to say this, we are 4 episodes in and we're only really focusing more on the relationship between Clark Kent and Lois. Yes, I understand that Clark Kent and Lois are always going to be a thing, no matter what Superman story there is, and there needs to be time devoted to it. But this seems to be more focused on the relationship drama rather than the superheroing.
This is a problem that existed in the She-Ra story writing. I gotta actually look into this now. There's too many coincidences that I keep noticing. Okay, I just looked it up. Apparently, the writers and producers of She-Ra, the Princesses of Power, also worked on this show.
Oh, okay, so that's why it looks so similar. Yeah, that explains it.
Which means all the problems that existed in the She-Ra writing could potentially exist here. But we're just going to have to see everything in future installments. Until then, we've been the Cartoon Gentlemen. I'm Rehash.
I'm Devin Ooze.
I'm Decipher.
And I am Cartoon Gent. And this has been a Gentleman's Chat. We will see you all next time.